So, with the success of Dead Rising, we've had a terrible Wii port, some comic books, a live-action movie that doesn't exist, and Frank even made some appearances in crossover games such as Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and even Project Cross Zone. But you know what's most important out of all this? Sequels got made. And today we're going to dig into Dead Rising 2. Keiji Inafune and some of his team were still involved with the project. However, instead of having it done in-house, they went to Vancouver-based developer Blue Castle Games, because this was around the time Capcom got obsessed with Western game development.
You're a grand old flag, you're a something-something flag, and forever in peace may you wave. You're the emblem blah, the one blah blah.
So what was their prior work before doing Dead Rising 2? They did 4 baseball games.
Well, that's quite the departure, but I can see why they wanted to step out of that element. Either way, Capcom was hyping this game up, to the point where they released a small prologue game known as Case Zero, a full month before 2's release, but we'll save that for another video. The game starts out with our new main character, motocross star Chuck Green, working on his motorbike. As his daughter Katie hands him a wrench, we see a bite mark on her wrist. A staff member comes in asking Chuck to sign some paperwork before he goes on the show Terror is Reality. And he takes Katie to a green room, and Chuck rides off to the first thing you do in the game. While waiting for the show to begin, a fellow competitor taunts Chuck.
Hey buddy, I heard you lost your wife in Vegas. I guess you suck at killing zombies, otherwise she'd still be around!
Save it for the show, shithead.
The announcer voice introduces us to the show and the show's host, and our main antagonist of the game, TK, who I have to say is not as interesting as Carlito, but he was still an entertaining asshole nonetheless. So while Dead Rising 1 opened up with you taking photos of the town, Dead Rising 2 opens up with you riding around on a motorbike with chainsaws attached while competing in TIR for a minute. You're driving around killing zombies for points. Zombies with a giant ball on their heads will score you extra points. You score the most points, you win. Yeah, no shit. Also to note, this also acts as the multiplayer for this game. However, considering nobody's playing this anymore, I could not get a match. And I've gotta say, the bike controls are a bit slippery. So as we win the game, TK announces Chuck is the winner, and Chuck got the prize money. And then TK rallies up his audience. While in the locker room, Chuck sees a news report about a protest group known as Cure being against Terror is Reality's treatment of zombies for entertainment. And one of our future allies, Stacy, even had a comment about how they won't stand for the government's systematic neglect for zombies. Never seen anyone stand up for the undead. And even get some comments from a Fortune City resident. Oh hey, that's Brad Swale. A fellow contestant comes up to Chuck to express his grief as he's lost his family in the Willamette incident. Chuck asks another contestant where the green rooms are at. He tells them where to go, and we get back in control. We run into TK's groupies, who would taunt Chuck about his disappointing performance while showing off that ass. Also, wait, but we won that game. Then an explosion hits while Chuck is in the elevator. Chuck gets up and escapes from the elevator while thinking of Katie. He opens the door to see people running, and some guy just got bit and has now been zombified. And yet another zombie outbreak has occurred. The zombie is about to attack Chuck as he tries to escape, but conveniently a random passerby gets in the way and he's getting eaten instead. And now, just like in the first game, we gotta pick up anything you can find to use as a weapon to fend off the zombies. But this time, since Chuck is a dad, he's gotta go find Katie before getting out of here. So we pick up any item to use as a weapon, but they feel a little weaker than before. But this is for a good reason that we'll get back to later. Anyway, Chuck makes it to the green room, assuming the zombie is attacking Katie. However, it turns out it was a staff member. He then finds Katie in the closet, who's understandably in a panic. But Chuck tells her to stay calm, as they need to escape. However, the zombie from before gets up, and Chuck has to carry his kid out of danger. So, because we have Katie in our arms, all Chuck can do at the moment is do this weak-ass kick on a zombie. So they are now outside in the plaza, and now we witness people being eaten alive or escaping into the safe house. The doors open, and we see our security guard and resident asshole Sullivan. As Chuck and Katie are about to enter, Sullivan notices the bite mark on Katie, telling Chuck he can't have her in here. Chuck explains how long she's had her condition, and that he had some Zombrex on him. Sullivan tells Chuck that he better have a lot, because they don't have any supplies in their safe house. And just like in the first game, rescue will take 3 days to get here.
Yeah, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
They're in the monitor room, and it turns out Chuck didn't really have any Zombrex, but our new ally Stacy Forsythe introduces herself, and tells them that there's some Zombrex in the pharmacy in the Royal Flush Mall, and she's cool enough to keep their situation a secret. Chuck asks if she knows any way out of the city, but she doesn't know. However, she gives Chuck a walkie to keep in touch, as she plays both a Jesse and an Otis role in keeping tabs on the monitors and gives you a call. Unlike Otis though, Stacy's calls won't keep you from fending off zombies, nor will she act offended if your call gets cut off. Thank you. So just like Frank in the first game, Chuck leaves the safe room via the air ducts to go out into the mall/casinos. As we make our way to the pharmacy, only to see some looters trying to rob the place. As one of said looters threatens the pharmacist at the counter, Chuck intervenes, and they now want some money off of him. These guys are regular enemies and not boss fights, so they're pretty much cannon fodder. We now got the Zombrex for Katie, but it's far too early to give it to her at the moment, which leads to one of my minor gripes with this game. Between 7 and 8 a.m., you need to be back at the safe room to give Katie her injections, so you really have to stop what you're doing at times and haul ass back to the safe house. Otherwise, you'll get a bad ending for Katie. I get it, Chuck is not going to bring his daughter out in danger like that, but it doesn't make it any less annoying to run back from a faraway area on the map. Also, why isn't Chuck just leaving the Zombrex he collects with Stacy just in case? She knows the time, and that would have been a smart plan. Anyway, we're also now doing our first escort in this game, since we just rescued the pharmacist lady. Now, in the first game, the AI for the survivors was so dumb to the point where it got frustrating to deal with out in the field. However, Blue Castle and Capcom knew about that criticism and flat out improved this. They no longer fall behind as much, and can even defend themselves better. They can even actually get themselves out of a grab from a zombie. And to make matters even better, since you don't have a higher platform to get into the safe room, this time you don't have to worry about a group of these people running into each other. This was a godsend. Anyway, after doing some screwing around, it's time to give Katie her medicine. And good to see the kid is getting more used to the shots now. Also, she's playing Mega Man on her PSP because of course.
Look, Dad, I got a new power in Mega Man.
Chuck walks in the break room for some coffee, only to see a news report on what caused the outbreak. As there is a fabricated story accusing Chuck of freeing the zombies to wreak havoc in Fortune City, while also claiming that he was a member of Cure. Chuck is understandably angry over the whole accusation. Stacy asks why they said he was a member of Cure, and apparently Chuck attended one meeting after his wife's death. Stacy explains that members of Cure have been accused of terrorism before, and all because they've protested against terror is reality. Chuck asks if Stacy believes him, and she gives him the answer of not knowing what to believe, but she says that Chuck doesn't seem like a terrorist, and she knows her group had no involvement. Chuck is now determined to prove his innocence within 3 days, and is now going to find the reporter Rebecca Chang at the hotel for the information on her source for that report. After the cutscene, we talk to Sullivan, as he gives Chuck the key to all maintenance rooms around Fortune City. We get a cutscene of Chuck walking into the maintenance room that's near the safe room, and he looks at a bat and a box of nails, and has an idea that leads to 2's best mechanic, combinations. Where you take any 2 compatible items, put them together at a bench, and make a stronger weapon. In this first case, a spiked bat, for example. But you can make even crazier shit, like combining a flashlight and jewelry, and it will score you a lightsaber. Does it make sense? No. Is it awesome regardless? Absolutely. As you go through more of the game, you get some combination cards that tells you what items you need to make certain weapons. And using your combined weapons scores you more PP, which helps you level Chuck up fast. So it's best to keep using those combos. This comes in handy because just guessing is a pain in the ass. Either way, you will be a force to reckon with these combined weapons. Also, on that note, shooting is vastly improved as well, as aiming no longer feels stiff. Chuck arrives at the hotel and spots Rebecca's work ID on the ground. As he picks up the ID, a zombie is about to attack, but Rebecca was conveniently around to shoot the zombie. As they introduce each other, Rebecca, being surprised he didn't flee the town by now, wanted to ask Chuck some questions, but his response is that he had nothing to do with the outbreak. Rebecca doesn't believe him because of the footage, but Chuck tells her it's a fake, and asks for the source. She does refuse to give her source, but Chuck strikes a deal that if she helps him find the evidence, he'll give her an interview. While she can't give him her sources, she does tell Chuck about the security office, where Chuck can see what went on in that footage. So we follow Rebecca, then she makes a grown-ass man like Chuck go to the bathroom, so we drop our save, not quite like Travis Touchdown, but close I suppose. They arrive back at the stadium, but a closed gate is in the way of the entrance. However, Rebecca just pushed a button that raises the gate, so Chuck got frustrated over nothing. They make it into the security room, but it's locked as we see Chuck trying to open the thing. However, Rebecca knows how to pick a lock, and they get in. Once in, they see the room completely trashed, the computers and monitors broken, and the guards laying dead in the chairs. Rebecca points out while there isn't enough to clear Chuck's name, it is clear someone is trying to cover something up. Stacy gives Chuck a call, telling him that stupid asshole Sullivan saw the report and is threatening to kick Katie out of the bunker.
Wait, who is that?
Stacy, Forsyth,
The leader of Cure?
I guess.
Chuck, you know damn well she's Cure's leader. As we return to the bunker, Sullivan is arguing with Stacy over Chuck and accusing them of being in cahoots. Chuck walks in, but Sullivan, being the biggest douche monkey in the series, tells him that he should have kicked him out. Chuck says he had no involvement with the outbreak. However, Sullivan, acting like a Fox News viewer, is asking Chuck how he explains what he saw on the news. Chuck explains that someone else was wearing his show gear to pin the crime on him, and is asking to have the 3 days to prove his innocence. He says he'll hand himself in if he doesn't find proof by the time the military arrives. And then Rebecca arrives. Sullivan then says Chuck can stay here if he keeps rescuing survivors, but won't cover for him when rescue comes, and makes a threat towards Chuck if he pulls something. Not like they would even have to worry about that since Chuck isn't an asshole, but whatever. After Sullivan leaves, Chuck explains that everything in the security room were smashed. Rebecca introduces herself to Stacy, however, she doesn't trust her, because after all, her report did accuse her organization of a crime they didn't commit. Rebecca then explains how things aren't as they seem, and she was only going by the info she had. Chuck does tell her that she can have her exclusive if she helps them uncover the situation, and they all agree to work together. Anyway, here's a break from the main case. So, enemy types again. Zombies function the same way as before, always ready to grab and eat Chuck, and will once again become more aggressive at night. This also means the queens are back too. There is one addition to zombies though, however, we will get to that later on as it's a spoiler. Not only do you have zombies and the previously mentioned looters, who also act as a merchant for whenever you want to buy some Zombrex, and more powerful weapons when you don't have the material to just make them, but psychopaths also make a return, with some even more unique fights. You have a rival motorcyclist who just wants to shit all over Chuck, a cannibalistic chef, a magician duo, a crazy dude in a mascot suit, a corrupt sheriff, a former Cure member who went insane after the outbreak happened, a group of rednecks who will snipe you when you're out in the city, and Christian.
I am going to shove your ass down your throat and make you eat your underwear!
This may still not be the full list, but these fights are still a great challenge. Except for that cannibal fight. That shit was just annoying, as he keeps healing himself. And always knocking you down, and the camera doesn't help matters. Anyway, back to the main plot. Stacy shows some concern for Katie given her situation. Chuck then says he'll do everything he can to make it up for her, then notices something on the camera. As it looks like some organized crime is going on in the maintenance tunnels, Chuck believes it could be a lead, as it may be done by the people who framed him. Stacy tells Chuck to be careful for Katie's sake, but you can tell she cares for the guy, and off to the underground tunnels we go. Once down there, Chuck spots some workers chatting on a walkie when a train comes up, and we see none other than the game show host, TK, calling the shots. Chuck tries to sneak, but accidentally knocks over some pieces of wood. Thus, TK spots him, taunting him for his quote-unquote pathetic performance.
Chucky, you made it out. After that pathetic performance you gave last night.
Fuck you, TK, I won that game. He then sixes men on Chuck, and closes the gate, and we gotta deal with gun guys. And just like the guards from the first game, guns are useless against them, so get your best melee weapon out and try not to get shot. As TK makes his escape, Chuck spots one of his guards riding around on a dirt bike. Wait, why the fuck is this dude riding around in the tunnels on a dirt bike, especially during his shift? Anyway, it's convenient for Chuck as he uses the wooden stick to knock the guy off the bike, and it crashed into the gate, making a hole to get through. And I see Chuck has played some GTA. I hope San Andreas is his favorite, because that's still the best one. And now we do a chase after the damn train. While TK's men are throwing shit at you or shoot at you, unfortunately though, the bike controls suck. This wasn't so bad in the beginning when you're just riding around in an arena slicing zombies up, but here, you're doing a chase. Any sudden movements will crash you into a wall, and you can't exactly turn in the air, which is a problem when you're trying to make a jump onto a moving train. Anyway, even though I clearly should not have been able to proceed, we get the cutscene of Chuck making the jump onto the train. Now we have a bunch of guys with guns versus a dude. Like I said, guns aren't very useful against these guys, and neither is the fire axe for some reason, so best bet is to go with the sledgehammer, as it's one of the best non-combo weapons in the game. And fight your way to TK. Chuck catches up to TK at the front of the train, confronting him about how he framed him with the fabricated footage. TK, being condescending, starts claiming shit like,
I made you famous.
wait, but Chuck was already a motocross star. You know what, I'm overthinking some throwaway line. Anyway, Chuck tells TK he's coming with him, and says he didn't cause the outbreak. TK is like, hell no, and detaches the cart he's on from the rest of the train to make a getaway, and fires some shots at Chuck. Chuck avoided some bullets, but TK got away. Stacy gives Chuck a call asking what happened, as he informs her that TK was really the one behind the outbreak, even letting her know that he was moving some equipment on the trains, but no idea what he was using it for. Of course, all this business will have to be put on hold for now, because we gotta give Katie her shots. And then Chuck randomly finds an underground maintenance key on the floor.
One convenient thing after another.
After doing some fights and escorts, we give Katie her shots, and she's apologizing to her dad for the fact that he has to go so far to get her medicine, like doing TIR. But Chuck, being a good dad, tells her that he would do anything for her, and honestly, it's a pretty heartwarming moment. Stacy then says she can't believe he took part on that show, but Chuck, despite agreeing how cruel it is, explains that he had no choice given the circumstances. And now we just gotta do some side stuff until the main case commences at 10 a.m. video game time. So let's rescue more people, possibly fight more psychos, find more Zombrex, and maybe have some fun at the casino. Back at the safe room, Chuck explains to Rebecca that TK was behind it all. However, she doesn't buy it, making the point of, why would he sabotage his own show by letting his own zombie supply loose? Even though Chuck explains he witnessed the whole thing. Rebecca still doesn't believe him, so he asks if TK was her source, but she says, don't be ridiculous. They feel a bit of an earthquake, but it turns out someone is breaking into the casino vaults, and Rebecca, trying to be Lois Lane over here, is going out into danger to find out who's doing the robbery. With that, you gotta go down to the vaults and destroy the drills. We make our way down to one of the casinos, and there's an armored van that's blocking the hole in the casino wall that's being guarded by TK's cronies, who will shoot or throw a grenade at you. After we blow up his van, TK sees this and is frustrated with his men, and now must stick around longer than planned. Rebecca is filming the van that's on fire.
Fantastic.
Hey, you're not Frank West. The car explodes in front of her, dumbass, and Chuck swoops in to get her away from it.
You've got a real knack for showing up at the right time, don't you? Have you covered wars or something?
Doesn't have the same kick as I've covered wars, you know, but it's still a funny callback nonetheless. Chuck now tells her that TK started the whole thing in order to rob the city of its money, and Rebecca says that she has to meet up with her sources, and wants Chuck to meet them. Despite her typically never giving away her sources, Chuck is in a special position at the moment. And now we gotta meet her at the Yucatan bar at 11. And because in game time it's 10 in the morning, we've got time to rescue people. Oh hey, a metal band. Anyway, we make it to the bar, and TK's bitches coming in trying to stop Chuck from thwarting their plans. As it turns out, they were Rebecca's sources. They even have Rebecca tied up. And now we have a boss fight. And yeah, it's a bit annoying dealing with two chicks with swords. And your only healing items are alcoholic beverages, so you may get screwed over if you're not prepared. I had the strategy of running around like a coward, shoot or melee attack when one of them are open, and get away to heal. Best part is, though, you only really need to kill one of them. Beer and Wolverine claws, don't fail me now! Once you kill one of the chicks, the other one who is upset tells Chuck that he will never escape Fortune City alive. And while saying that she will never be complete again, she commits suicide. We rescue Rebecca, and Chuck saying he couldn't believe she trusted those psychos, but she only did so because they had the tape. She found out that TK has a chopper coming in the evening, planning on getting as much money as he can before leaving the city. Rebecca doesn't know where he's meeting with his chopper, so they're gonna have to watch out for it. So now they have to meet on the rooftop of the bunker later on. With that break from the main case, Dead Rising 2 does have a Las Vegas-esque city as a setting. So, let's gamble! In the casinos, there are some mini-games to get some extra cash. Sad you can't play slots, though. And even have a few side cases where you play poker, both inside the casino and in the bunker. You can play strip poker with some of the survivors you rescued. Anyway, back to the plot. Chuck meets up with Rebecca on the rooftop, and spent a good bit looking for TK's chopper through some binoculars. After a while, they finally catch TK's chopper landing on the hotel roof. We make it to the hotel, and some of TK's hired guards are shooting up the place. And you have to get rid of them to use the elevator. But god, I hate dealing with the gun wielders. Let's hit them with Wolverine claws, and shoot a propane tank when they're near it.
That's a clean burning hell, I tell you what!
We get on the elevator, but before we go topside, Rebecca comes in and joins because
You're the best lead I've ever had.
Once on the rooftop, they spot TK and his goons trying to make an escape with the money. One of the goons points out that Chuck is here, so they try to haul ass out of Fortune City. Chuck notices there's a winch hook and quickly grabs it to keep the chopper from flying away. So now we're in a boss fight. You have to throw any item you can find at the chopper to damage its rotor. If you're running away, they will shoot at you with the Gatling gun. And if you're close enough, TK will try to run you over with the chopper. If he's too high, press the button on the winch to lower him down. However, once he's able to fly back up, you may want to get the hell away from the winch. After the fight is done, the chopper is no longer functional, so it tips and TK ends up falling out of the pilot seat. And he hits the ground. He's lucky that was not a big fall. The helicopter then crashes, a bunch of burning dollar bills start falling around, waste of good money, good going. And now they have TK at the safe house. Sullivan coming in is asking why is TK here since he's TIR's host. Chuck explains that TK was the one who was behind the whole incident and framed Chuck and co. for the whole situation, just to make some more money. Sullivan tells them how impressed he is that they could bring down such a big shot. Rebecca is showing some excitement for the story, knowing that she can get an award. Sullivan suggests that they kill TK while he's out cold, but Chuck explains that they need to keep him alive, so he can get his proper punishment for his actions. Sullivan then lets them keep him alive, while giving Chuck some handcuffs to keep TK at bay. And he will keep an eye on the guy. We get another cutscene where Stacy tells us that rescue is coming first thing in the morning, and as a reminder to give Katie her Zombrex dose around 7. And then, time to do more rescuing. So 7 hits, we interrupt Katie's game of Mega Man to give her Zombrex, and Stacy informs Chuck that rescue will be on their way and is guaranteed to rescue anyone in the bunker, so we need to rescue more people. Chuck, Katie, Stacy, and Sullivan gather in the monitor room to witness the military rescue's arrival. They come in running some zombies over and somehow drove up the stairs, led by Sergeant Boykin. Boykin tells his men the gist: kill all zombies and rescue survivors. At least he's not a total asshole like Brock. One of the soldiers was about to shoot, but Boykin insists he gets the first shot before the rest can go wild. As the military start getting trigger happy on the zombies, Rebecca is recording the action from a distance. However, there's some sort of green gas shooting up from the sewers. Random zombie steps on the storm drain where the gas is raising from, and it starts mutating and spits acid on the soldier who was taunting him a second ago. Then more of them show up to overwhelm the soldiers. On top of that, it's getting hard to see, so not only are they getting killed by zombies, but also some accidental friendly fire. After witnessing his men getting murdered, Boykin gets into the military car. Wait, why is the driver dead? You would think that guy would have been in the safe spot. Anyway, he drives away from the scene. Rebecca sees a mutated zombie approaching her and flees. Run for your life! Back at the bunker, everyone is wondering what they just witnessed, since the military just got taken out. They see Rebecca on the monitors, heading towards the location Boykin went to because she's a dumbass, and Chuck is about to go out and get her. But Katie stops her dad from going out there because of what just happened. Stacy is now asking how did they get out of Fortune City now, since the rescue ended up being useless. Chuck suggests they find a way out themselves. Sullivan lets them know that by his understanding, if one rescue attempt fails, another could show up within 24 hours if there are signs of survivors. Stacy calls out Sullivan for the "to my understanding" comment because he knew about standard operating procedures beforehand.
Hey, yo! That's fucking sus.
Sullivan then says he's the one security man who made it and is trying his hardest. Stacy asks what happens if the rescue fails too, and Sullivan's answer is firebombing, meaning everyone could get killed. Either way, Chuck goes out to retrieve Rebecca, and Stacy tells him to be careful because let's face it, if these zombies can take out a military platoon, what chances does some motocross rider have? Then again, last game, a military commander got his ass beat by a photographer, so anything is possible. The more mutated zombies are the enemy types I was holding off on talking about earlier, so may as well mention them now. These guys are more aggressive and faster than normal zombies. They will spit acid in your face and grab you. Once that happens, you gotta do a QTE to get out of their grasp. Anyway, once we make our way to Rebecca's location, we see that Sergeant Boykin has gone insane to the point of barking orders to the dead bodies of his men. You kind of feel bad for the guy experiencing PTSD like that, but we got a hot reporter to save. Rebecca calls out Chuck's name when he arrives, but Boykin knocks her out and brings her to the car. Thinking Chuck is a zombie, he grabs a gun, and we begin the boss fight. I recommend having any sort of gun or any ranged weapon because, well, obviously he will shoot, and occasionally throw grenades. Take cover, but shoot when you can get a good shot at him. He will also run towards the boxes of ammo, which makes him vulnerable, so go crazy. And of course he can knock you down, shoot at you for a little bit, and throws you across the parking lot area. After we beat Boykin, his last words are, "I can't believe a worthless zombie did me in." Chuck gets Rebecca out of the car, but Boykin does a kamikaze move to try to take Chuck down with him. So, the two run away as the soldier blows himself up. Chuck asks if Rebecca is okay, but she injured her leg, so we gotta carry her back to the bunker. Back at the safe room, they give Rebecca's ankle a cold patch, and Stacy asks what happened to the zombies, since they went crazy. Speaking of crazy, what happened to the texture on Stacy's shirt? Rebecca says what we all saw with the zombies mutating with the gas. TK wakes up and makes a drug joke. Sullivan looked ready to beat TK's ass, but Chuck stops him because they need to take him alive. Chuck asks where did TK get the gas, and he refuses to talk. Chuck then asks why did he frame him. TK then says it's only because his name is what someone gave him. Chuck asks what he's talking about, and TK gives reasons why he would make up the story, being a famous motocross star who's angry over the death of his wife and probably left some DNA over the stage, so it was more convenience for TK. Chuck was about ready to knock him out, but Stacy stops him because it ain't worth it. Rebecca thinks TK knows more than what he's letting on, and that there's no way he made the gas since he doesn't have the resources. Also because the dude is not a scientist, he's a game show host. Then suddenly an alarm goes off, and to quote Lloyd Bannings from the Trail series, the zombies got over the barrier. Chuck tells everyone he's gonna hotwire the panel, and that they need to barricade the door to the security room. So what we need to do here is gather the generator, barrel of fuel, and a spool of wire. Bring them to the gate panel and hack the gate, and close the door. You even have the survivors you rescued fending off the zombies, so you may want to protect them while you're doing your task. Once everything is gathered, you have to mash A or X depending on what controller you're using, and then bam, your safe house is secure. Chuck comes back thinking he got most of the zombies. Katie comes out from under the couch saying she knew he would get them. What a sweet kid. And Stacy is wondering where the hell Sullivan was because he's supposed to be the security guard here.
Hey, yo! That's fucking sus.
TK somehow got out of the handcuff, but is then attacked and bitten by a zombie. You missed one, Chuck. Chuck kills the zombie with a fire hydrant to save the guy. Back in the room, Sullivan explains he was sitting at his post, got knocked out, and woke up looking at Chuck and TK. And TK somehow got loose, but it won't happen again.
Sure, Jan.
TK is begging Chuck to get him some Zombrex. Like, I have some spare, but Katie's more important than some asshole who framed me for a crime I didn't commit. Chuck comments that TK has not turned yet and asks why. Stacy then tells Chuck that some people are more resistant than others. You know, like how Frank was able to survive zombification because of his resistance, and was able to help Isabella make Zombrex. Anyway, TK says he can set him free if he helps him. Chuck asks how long does he have, but like with Frank, it's unknown until it happens. In the lounge, they're watching the news, and there is a report of no survivors, when another rescue team saw the shelter overrun with zombies, and that they lost contact with the rescue team, presuming that they have also died. So the president orders a bombing on Fortune City at 7 p.m. Stacy asks if they still think she's paranoid over the news. Sullivan then says they just got the wrong info and she should just calm down. Like, bro, everyone in here is about to die. Stacy, rightfully angry, states that they're about to get bombed, but his response is, the government isn't just gonna kill a bunch of unarmed citizens. As if they didn't just assume everyone died. He then claims they need to go out there and take control like a madman, and Stacy asks if he's crazy. Chuck tells everyone to stay calm and think of a way out of the situation they're in. Rebecca then says she can get in touch with her station and rescue everyone because, and I quote, "This is the story of the century." Calm down, girl. This is like the second time a zombie outbreak happened. Chuck then says there's more going on than just a heist after the mutating gas and now a bombing. Rebecca then says that even though TK started this mess and stated a lie about Chuck, there's no way he got in contact with the media about them all being dead. And Stacy brought up that he couldn't have called for the military to firebomb the place either, meaning more is going on than just him. Sullivan, still acting suspicious, claims they've been through a lot, and not to make things worse by possibly making shit up. Chuck asks if they can see Rebecca's video footage, and they notice that the gas is coming from underground. Chuck is going down there to investigate, but Sullivan stops him. He makes a point that the tunnels are infested with the mutated zombies, and he could end up getting killed down there, but Chuck argues that they have no choice at the moment. Sullivan then says we all have a choice. Really sounds like you're hiding something, you old bitch. Rebecca wants to come along, but she's too injured right now, so Chuck says stay here and rest, and we go out. So here is also your decision of what ending you're gonna go with, A or S. Giving TK the Zombrex will land you ending S, which is what you would think would be the canon ending. However, as a later game will tell you, that's not the case. Ending A is the canon ending. But I figured, let's go with ending S because Chuck was really hoping for TK to be alive to admit to his crimes. Anyway, we make it down to the underground tunnels again, and can't help but notice that the zombies are moving towards and gathering around a peculiar door. Chuck stares at the keypad on the wall for a bit, until the door opens. Chuck follows the zombies in and sees that there is a lab, where the gas is being made. As Chuck sees the guards and the equipment, something is making a loud noise, causing the heads of the zombies to explode. Thus, the queen wasps come flying out, and fly into a metallic beehive, as they seem to be gathering a certain amount of queens for shipment. One zombie survives, so the guards use a sonic ray gun to make sure its head explodes too. A pretty useful weapon for this portion of the game. They're pushing down a gas canister, and the soldiers catch Chuck in the lab. We follow the arrow to a room with two scientists talking about how the queen wasps are mature and have gotten more than what they need. They're about to call a doctor to start preparing their harvest for shipment. They make their call, but then Chuck gets their attention. And thanks, Chuck, these guys just shot first. After killing the two scumbag scientists, Chuck sees that the people behind this was a pharmaceutical company called Phenotrans. Wait. A pharmaceutical company causing a zombie outbreak in a Capcom game. That sounds oddly familiar. Chuck takes their laptop, their phone, drinks the guy's coffee. Ew, Chuck, no! He probably drank out of that! And then he takes the guy's security card and pulls the lever. Back at the safe room, Chuck shows everyone the laptop and tells them that Phenotrans are behind the outbreak. Stacy points out how odd that is, since they're the company that makes Zombrex. Sullivan once again intervenes, saying that we've been talking nonsense this whole time, and claims they're imagining things under stress.
Sus.
Rebecca looks into the laptop data. Stacy asks why would they do this, and Rebecca explains that they did this outbreak because Zombrex sales have gone down in the past few years. So now, with another outbreak and stronger zombies that even the military can't handle, they can once again turn a profit for more Zombrex sales.
Ain't capitalism a bitch?
While Sullivan is acting like they're all crazy, Chuck tells everyone they need to get that information out there and take down this corrupt company. Chuck hands Rebecca the phone that he retrieved. As she was about to make a call to her station, Sullivan finally shows his true colors and kills Rebecca.
No!
Sullivan takes the phone, and Chuck points out that Sullivan was on Phenotrans' payroll. Sullivan tells Chuck that he and everyone else was supposed to die in the outbreak. Asshole Sullivan then says he will shoot the rest of them and will get away with it when the fire bombing commences. And Katie pretty much says what we were all thinking this entire time.
I knew you were the bad guy.
Before he pulls the trigger, Stacy swings a bat and knocking the gun out of his hand. Chuck picks up the gun and shoots, but Sullivan takes off, and now we gotta hunt the bastard down. We get told he went to Yucatan Casino. Once there, we found out he went up the elevators and on the rooftop. Chuck confronts Sullivan, saying he's killed all these people for money. Sullivan responds by saying that the money was only secondary, and they're saving lives. Chuck asks what he's talking about, and then Sullivan explains that they needed to take some necessary steps to maintain a consistent supply, as they need a shit ton of queens. Like how Isabella made the drug back in the first game. Chuck asks about TK looting the city, and it turns out they paid him well for his part, but he got greedy and wanted more cash, meaning TK was doing his own thing, which had nothing to do with Phenotrans. Chuck asks whatever happened to Do No Harm, and Sullivan brings up how a lot of people are affected in this country because of the outbreak and Zombrex, including Katie, and that Fortune City was a price to pay to ensure America's way of life. Chuck points out how much of a murderer Sullivan is, and Sullivan, being a piece of shit, thinks that those deaths were acceptable, and it wasn't the first and certainly won't be the last. Okay, he's not wrong, there's a whole series of games left. Chuck also says this awesome line that Sullivan caused the Vegas outbreak too, thus, in a way, killed his wife and ruined his family, and Sullivan claims that all their actions were necessary. And now, it's time to start the boss fight. Sullivan will shoot you if you're away from him, and once you're up on the platform with him, he'll start using his fists. If you go at him with a melee weapon, he will knock the weapon out of your hands. You may be lucky with the Wolverine claws, though. And Sullivan's kick can even send Chuck flying. Depending on if he blew a hole in the roof, you could also fall into the floor below the roof. Speaking of, Sullivan will throw flares in Chuck's general direction if he loses sight of you, which act as targets for the AC-130 gunship to fire a bomb. And he will call for an airstrike at times. Yeah, this boss is a bit of a pain in the ass with all these things I mentioned, but thankfully you got a lot of health items laying around, so you don't have to worry too much about being prepared. However, I have died a few times from shit like getting stun locked by his freaking gun.
Oh, I got dead again. This game stinks.
And there's even some hit detection problems from time to time too. My spiked bat clearly hit him, but he took no damage. I did end up using the air kick strategy like I did for DR1's final boss, and that took care of Sullivan. After the fight, Chuck gets knocked down by an explosive round on the ship. Sullivan attempts to make an escape with a skyhook while claiming that he and Phenotrans are the good guys. However, Chuck handcuffs the waist of his harness to a railing. The AC-130 snags him and...
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
So now Sullivan has been torn in half, and Chuck makes a call to Channel 6, telling them that there are survivors at the bunker and proof of the whole mess, and asks for rescue choppers. Chuck flies back to the bunker and asks some random survivors if they've seen Katie or Stacy, and they have not. Chuck goes back down to find them, but the pilot tells him to get back on the chopper. Chuck just tells the guy to go, because what kind of dad if he would be if he left his daughter to die in this place? We see an empty bunker, and Chuck heads to the security room, only to see that Katie's backpack is lying on the floor, and then boom, credits, with another banger song called Kill the Sound.
Two voices in my head, and I want one of them dead, so I can focus on remembering the words you said. Foundations trembling, these voices deafening, feels like I'm running out of time. I need to kill the sound.
Anyway, before I continue into overtime mode, I may as well mention ending A, as like I said, that's the canon ending. So, Chuck arrives on the roof of the safe house. Stacy is carrying a sleeping Katie and coming towards Chuck, but she drops her backpack. She gives Chuck his kid, and they get on the chopper. Chuck notices her backpack isn't here, and they can't leave it because of the stuff that belonged to Chuck's wife are in it. He finds the backpack and is about to grab it, but then zombie TK comes out of the elevator and attacks Chuck. Stacy briefly leaves the helicopter to help Chuck, but he throws the backpack to her and tells her to go and take care of Katie while being pinned by TK and other zombies in the elevator. She gets back to the helicopter and they fly away, leaving Chuck's fate unknown. P.S. Go buy Dead Rising 2 Case West. Okay, now back to Ending S. Chuck is watching the monitors to find Stacy and Katie's location, but then TK is making some announcement on the walkie. It turns out that TK kidnapped Stacy and Katie. TK then tells Chuck he's gonna have to put in some work for him in exchange for the girls. And overtime mode here is basically the same as the first game, except this time we're not making a drug. TK just wants a bunch of shit. So what we need to grab are compromising photo, gift basket, expensive champagne, case of Queens, mobile headset, USB drive, and a lab suit. What does TK need all this shit for? Fuck if I know. He probably just wants to troll Chuck. After we gather everything, we head to the arena where the game started. Chuck makes his way to the door, but TK does the surprise motherfucker and hits him with a stun gun. While Chuck is on the ground, TK kicks him and shocks him again and again because
he's an asshole.
Chuck, while out cold, is dangling above the arena full of zombies, but is woken up by TK taunting him on the microphone. We then see Katie and Stacy tied up and being lowered into the zombie pit. Chuck climbs up the rope and gets topside and tries to pull the crank to get the girls out of danger, but TK interferes, and now it's final boss time. You're once again stripped of your weapons, so you either use some fighting moves or go fetch a weapon on the platform. TK will hit you with his microphone and try to charge at you. If you get caught in his charge, you have to do a QTE to avoid more damage. While dealing with his ass, you have to keep an eye on the meter on the right of the screen, indicating how high or low Katie and Stacy are. So, whenever TK goes away, you better get to that crank and start mashing A. But also be careful because TK will return and come after you. If you go to the side to get some health items or a weapon, TK will turn on the pyrotechnics, so you better get the hell out of there quickly. Eventually, he will start pulling out an SMG and shoot around the place to hit you, because of course, why wouldn't TK play dirty? So after we finally beat TK, he falls to the ground. Chuck goes to the crank to rescue Katie and Stacy, but TK grabs his leg, gets up, and starts choking him, and pins him at the ledge. While stating his win big catchphrase from his show, Chuck manages to get him off and throw him over the ledge. Thus, TK falls to his death. Chuck raises the girls back up to safety and makes a pun because he's a dad and dad makes dad jokes. They do a group hug and walk away. And then this happens.
Why would you do that? That's not funny at all! Why would you do that to me? Why did you do that?
And that was Dead Rising 2. And in my opinion, it's a worthy sequel. And a very impressive one at that, considering they went straight to having a different development team.
Thankfully, 2 didn't get some unnecessary Wii port that sucks, but instead, we got some extras that we'll cover later on. Capcom was so impressed with Blue Castle's work with DR2 that they outright bought them out and renamed them Capcom Vancouver, so things were looking up for the future.
We're not exactly done with Dead Rising 2 just yet, however, because the next time I am dusting off my old 360 and we're gonna go play the Xbox Live Arcade exclusive titles Dead Rising 2 Case West, and Case Zero. Peace out, everybody.